When it comes to fan favorite story tropes, everyone loves a good redemption arc. You know the type. We start things off with a brash rookie with potential, a little arrogant, a little messy, but deep down, a big heart. Think Maverick from Top Gun, Star-Lord from Guardians of the Galaxy, or heck, even Hot Rod from the Transformers movie. These guys may start off immature, but we root for them because they're charming, well-meaning, and know exactly when you've lost that love and feeling. They're destined to rise up to the occasion. So when G.I. Joe got their shot at a full-length animated movie in 1987, they tried to throw in that same feel-good coming-of-age magic as well, but with a twist. They skipped the lovable part and just gave us a straight-up asshole. The year was 1987, and for a preteen like me, it was pretty much business as usual. I was still all about the toys and eagerly looking forward to the new batch of Joe and Cobra characters the year had in store. So when I finally got my hands on my very first figure that year, the awesome battle-armored Cobra Commander, I did what any kid would do before even ripping open his plastic prison. I flipped it over to check out who else was coming. Actually, it was a whole lot more of coming soon. Yeah, I guess it must have been an early release. But even with nearly half the figures still shrouded in mystery, there was plenty of new Joe goodness to feast my eyes on. Now, if you've seen my past videos, you probably know what comes next. I usually zero in on one particular cool-looking figure, the one that instantly becomes my favorite of the wave. And yes, that did happen. But this video isn't about the military police officer Law and his dog Order. You can check that video out later. I'll place a link in the description below. Instead, it's actually about the Joe that didn't grab my attention back then. A character I totally overlooked. That Joe was none other than the Green Beret himself, Falcon. Now I know what you're thinking, how could I overlook such a cool looking dude like Falcon? Well, yes, in hindsight I agree, he did kinda look cool, but next to a red bearded dude with the word survival emblazoned on his chest, or a sinister looking fellow with some sort of colorful round shield kinda thing, or a guy running into battle decked out in a flower powered shirt, a traditional looking soldier dressed in all green camo just looked, ordinary. Regardless of my first impression though, for one reason or another, Falcon ended up being one of the first 87 Joes I got my hands on. But even then, he didn't really blow me away. To me, he just felt like a second-rate Flint. He also wore a beret and carried a shotgun. Though to be fair, it was a cooler looking shotgun. And his other accessory, a backpack with a radio antenna and a knife that you could slot into the side, was also pretty badass. That being said, his original designation as a Green Beret basically flew over my 11-year-old head, and it was completely lost on me as to why his addition to the Joe team was actually a big deal. See, for those not in the know, my younger self included, the Green Berets are a special group of elite US Army soldiers trained to do things that most regular troops aren't. Officially, they're called the US Army Special Forces, and they get their nickname from the distinctive green berets that they wear. But it's not just about the headgear. What makes them stand out is what they're trained to do. Sure, they're highly skilled fighters, but they're also experts at teaching, training, and solving complex problems in dangerous and unpredictable environments overseas. Their main specialties include helping local resistance fighters battle hostile regimes or invaders, training friendly foreign armies so that they can defend themselves, conducting fast, precise attacks on high-value targets, hunting down terrorists and stopping attacks before they happened, sneaking behind enemy lines to gather intelligence. And beyond all that, they also take on missions like rescuing hostages, tracking missing persons, stopping drug traffickers, and even doing humanitarian work like clearing landmines or providing aid after disasters. This was all neatly summed up and simplified in the flavored text of Falcon's file card, which also gave a good idea of just how cool of a character Falcon actually was. Green Berets are specialists in training and leading native insurgents. Native insurgents are usually primitive tribal people who respond to two types of leadership. You can bully and overwhelm them with superior firepower and technology, or you can bite the head off a snake, chug-a-lug the local beverage, and yell, "Follow me!" Falcon is a snake biter if I ever saw one. Anyway, Falcon's Green Beret's specialty of operating in foreign lands would come into play in the original Marvel comics, as he is utilized and survives missions in both Sierra Gordo and Trucial Abysmia, where other allies and Joes, unfortunately, die. In Sierra Gordo, Falcon witnesses the deaths of several original members of the October Guard, which is the Russian equivalent of G.I. Joe. But it's in Trucial Abysmia where the proverbial shit really hits the fan, as Falcon is part of a Joe squad captured by Cobra and dumped into a pit in the desert where they are mercilessly gunned down by an overzealous Saw Viper. While the initial hail of bullets takes out the OG medic Doc along with Joe's Crankcase, Heavy Metal, and Thunder, Falcon's quick action of momentarily taking out the Saw Viper with an expertly thrown knife allows him and the rest of the Joes to escape by commandeering a Cobra Rage tank, which is then blown up, killing even more Joes, Crazy Legs, Breaker, and Quick Kick, leaving Duke, Cross Country, apparently having your vehicle still on retail is a great ass saver, and Falcon as the only survivors who are finally spared, with the Saw Viper being ordered to stand down. See, here's the thing. Upon hearing of the Joe's initial capture, fearing severe retaliation, Cobra Commander quickly orders his men to get rid of them, as in, let them go, to which his men, and particularly the Saw Viper, misconstrued into, well, kill them all. Oopsie. So anyway, yeah, there definitely was more to Falcon than just looking like the second coming of Flint. And it wasn't long before that snake-biting Green Beret was a favorite in my collection, which would be a good thing because apparently Hasbro too had big plans for their brand new Green Beret. See, by the mid-80s, Hasbro was pretty much riding high with the success of both G.I. Joe and Transformers. So much so that they felt that the time was right to level up both properties by giving each of them their very first full-length movie. And despite both lines being rather different, I mean, one being about real American heroes and the other robots in disguise, both movies sort of had similar formulas. While yes, both movies kind of expanded and opened up their respective universes, their main objectives as always was to sell more toys, and more specifically, sell new toys to the kiddies. And so with that in mind, these movies introduced a new cast of colorful characters. But more than that, each featured a specific new central character to lead the way. So the Transformers had the fiery young Autobot Cavalier Hot Rod, and G.I. Joe would have Falcon. And I would love to have all of you as friends of the Toy Shelf. Yeah, I know everyone's doing it, but if you've been enjoying my stuff and would like some extra perks, like early access and collection tours, reviews, and stories on other toy properties, why not give my channel membership a try? For a teeny tiny amount, you'll get all that, plus my ever-living gratitude. All you gotta do is click on that join button on my channel homepage, and that's it. But as always, any way you choose to help, like liking, sharing, commenting, and giving a sub, will be greatly appreciated. So, thank you. Anyway, as per his status as the new star of the G.I. Joe movie, Hasbro spared no expense, hiring actor Don Johnson, who at the time was best known as arguably the definition of cool on the TV screen, playing Detective James Sonny Crockett in the show Miami Vice, to voice Falcon, who is introduced in the movie as part of a group of new recruits nicknamed the Rawhides. And right out of the gate, it's quickly established that Falcon is kind of, well, a f***up. He is literally absent when the Rawhides make their very first official roll call in the movie, as he is busy giving a civilian named Heather an unauthorized tour of the facility where the captured Cobra Emperor Serpentor is being held prisoner. And in the process of impressing his lady friend, he also nearly takes off Duke's head with a laser blast. Man, talk about lightning reflexes. Too bad not fast enough for what's to come later on. Anyway, Heather turns out to be the dreadnought Zarana in disguise, who before being escorted off the base is able to gather vital information to be used later on by the bad guys to rescue their imprisoned emperor. But don't worry kiddies, the very capable Green Beret Falcon is assigned to be the very first line of defense monitoring the perimeter of Serpentor's prison, so all's good. That is, until Falcon decides to abandon his post. so he can do some butt slapping and kiss stealing with fellow Rawhide Jinx, who, Heather aside, is apparently Falcon's latest crush. And so, with Falcon a little preoccupied, no one is around to sound the alarm when the Dreadnoks, along with Cobra Law agents, the venomous Pythona, and monstrous Nemesis Enforcer, make their move and infiltrate the prison. And despite the best efforts of Joe Bros, Alpine, and Bazooka, and the bare-chested tattooed Cajun Marine Gung Ho, Serpentor is freed, and the three Joes end up seriously injured. Hey, it could have been worse. Just ask Brawn, Prowl, Ironhide, and Ratchet. Anyway, this proves to be the final straw for Falcon, and General Hawk has him court-martialed. And during his trial, we get another juicy revelation. In an effort to sway the court towards a lighter sentence, Duke reveals that Falcon is his dun-dun-dun half-brother. Actually, in earlier drafts, Falcon was supposed to be Hawk's son, or brother, but whatever. They were the ones who were supposed to be related, which would explain the similar Birds of Prey themed codenames. But in the end, the writers ultimately went with Duke, whom Falcon is forever thankful to for stepping in to defend him. Just kidding. During a court recess, instead of saying thanks, he flat out tells Duke to piss off and get out of his life. Like I said, a-hole. Which is weird given that the Green Berets were supposed to be the best of the best in terms of skill and character. How the hell did this guy get in? Still, despite Falcon's ingratitude, Duke's plea works. Sorta. Instead of getting kicked out of the Joes entirely, Falcon is sentenced to the Slaughterhouse. Now, as ominous as that sounds, in the G.I. Joe universe, the Slaughterhouse is not the place where he gets to stay up all night with an awesome 80s band, nor is it where Falcon is put out of his misery and chopped up for some juicy steaks. Okay, let's just forget I made that rather gross cannibalistic reference, shall we? No, in this case, the Slaughterhouse is Sergeant Slaughter's personal home / training camp located in the middle of nowhere. Falcon is literally kicked out of a Tomahawk helicopter and left to parachute to his next destination, where he meets the Renegades, Sergeant Slaughter's personal crew composed of ex-footballer Red Dog, ex-Viper Mercer, and ex-circus performer Taurus. See the trend there? Anyway, after a rather warm welcome by the Renegades, Sergeant Slaughter makes his grand entrance, setting the disease at ease. So it doesn't take long before Falcon acclimates to his new situation and slowly but surely earns the Renegades and Slaughter's respect. And I guess the writers were hoping our respect as well. So this is sort of where the whole redemptive arc of the Green Beret begins. After a good number of training sessions, Falcon and the Renegades get their first assignment of infiltrating a Cobra Terrordrome to gather information. And while Falcon is captured, he hangs on long enough through an intense Serpentor slapfest, providing a distraction enabling Slaughter and his Renegades to rig the drome to blow. Of course, they rescue Falcon before skedaddling. Which leads us to the scene. Okay, but first, the battle, where Cobra retaliates and takes the Joes head-on in their home court, which on a normal day would sound like a fool's errand, but this time around, the snakes are backed up by the organic, viney, squirty, and wormy forces of Cobra la 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 la. Anyway, all this is done to recover the new MacGuffin of the movie, the Broadcast Energy Transmitter, or BET for short. We'll get back to that contraption a little later on. All you gotta know is that this battle culminates in a showdown between Serpentor and Falcon, who would've and should've gotten a venomous snake spear jammed into his heart if it weren't for Duke, who valiantly gets in the way and takes the spear, meant for Falcon, into his own chest. So much for lightning-quick laser-dodging reflexes. Too slow. Anyway, so there's a lot to unpack with this scene, which was obviously meant to kick Falcon's redemption arc into overdrive. I mean, who wouldn't make a resolve to get their act together and be a credit to their country after seeing their half-brother take the proverbial snake bullet for him and die? Because, make no mistake about it, Duke died. Or at least that was the game plan from the get-go. Fortunately for the 6'2" Eyes of Blue First Sergeant, it was not his day to meet his maker, thanks to a certain optimistic truck robot who kicked the bucket the previous year. See, in 1986, the Transformers movie was released, with, as I mentioned earlier, the same game plan, introducing new characters to sell more toys, which included a new leader. And so, to make way for the new guy, they had to get rid of the old guy, and so Optimus Prime was, how can I say this, made one with the Matrix, which then sent children into hysterics and angry parents calling for Hasbro's head. And so, realizing that they had royally screwed the pooch on that one, immediately backtracked their plans to kill Duke and just conveniently have him slip into a coma and wake up at the end of the movie off screen. So, yay! But that wasn't the end of the story. It gets better. See, originally the G.I. Joe movie was supposed to be released before the Transformers one, but was delayed due to production issues. I heard from a friend of a friend that Don Johnson had issues getting out of Miami or something. But yeah, so imagine if things worked out as planned. Duke would have died before Prime, and I mean, I'm a huge fan of Duke, but even I'll concede that his death wouldn't have generated half as much vitriol as Prime, so I'm guessing he would have stayed dead. Anyway, boy, did we go off on a tangent there. So Duke died, slips into a coma, and Falcon, well, he changes his ways and leads the Joes straight into the heart of Cobra La 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 La, where Falcon has his rematch with Serpentor, and thanks to the help of another snake, no, like a literal snake who was formerly Cobra Commander, the Green Beret ultimately gets the best of the Cobra Emperor by illustrating Edna Mode's point that capes are dangerous liabilities.
No kicks!
But taking out the Cobra Emperor, nor poking the actual main Cobra Law baddie Golobulus in the eye with a stick wouldn't be Falcon's greatest accomplishment. Nope, he does a whole lot more. Remember the BET? Well, Cobra La 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 didn't steal it in order to broadcast basic cable that targeted Black American audiences. No, they needed the BET to incubate a bunch of fungozoid seed pods in space and cause them to mature and shower the Earth with mutative spores to turn Earthlings into degenerative monsters. I don't know, man. Spores in space? I mean, I'm not a scientist, but wouldn't re-entry into the Earth's atmosphere basically cause those spores to burn up? But anyway, the Joes are unable to stop the pods from hatching and the spores are on their way until the quick-thinking Falcon amps up the BET to basically fry all the spores in space and cause the BET itself to overload and, well, blow up Cobra La 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 La. So the Joes win the day and Falcon also finally gets his kiss with Jinx. So great job, Falcon. And with the movie done, G.I. Joe was ready to move on to their next animated chapter with their new guy, Falcon, leading the way. At least that was the plan. Unfortunately, after the Transformers movie apparently bombed, Hasbro got cold feet with G.I. Joe and ended up releasing their movie straight to video, and the original cartoon series was cancelled soon after. And so we would have to wait a little bit longer before we would see Falcon in action again, because fortunately, unlike his fellow Rawhides, Falcon would return. Unfortunately, it would be in the next G.I. Joe cartoon series produced by Dick, which is a whole nother monstrosity in itself that many G.I. Joe fans refuse to acknowledge ever existed. But I mean, Falcon does show up, so I have to mention it. In the two-part episode, The Greatest Evil, the Joes find themselves teaming up with Cobra to battle, well, the greatest evil, the drug dealer named The Headman, who is flooding the streets with this new and highly addictive drug called Spark. And given the problem at hand, it would make perfect sense to have a Joe who specializes in stopping drug traffickers like, the Green Beret Falcon on board. Unfortunately, Falcon apparently is the drug addict in the story. Oh, how the mighty have fallen. I guess Jinx was bad luck for the dude. And when his dirty little secret is discovered, Duke immediately kicks his own brother out of the team. I guess getting struck in the heart by a snake spear was Duke's limit when it came to being patient with his little bro. Anyway, ultimately, Falcon manages another mini redemption arc, finding the Headman's super secret drug lair and leading both Joe and Cobra forces to it, and tackling the Headman himself, causing the dude to accidentally overdose on his own drug, killing him. That's right, Headman actually dies. No coma here. And at the end of the day, Falcon reconciles with his brother and goes into rehab with a new girl. And so all is good. Anyway, one thing worth noting in this appearance is that Falcon is sporting a new look. While he still has his signature green beret, he's now wearing a new predominantly gray camouflage ensemble, which is reflective of his new action figure that was out at the time of this cartoon, the Sonic Fighting Falcon, who was basically the OG figure painted up in gray with a huge backpack with helicopter blades. Yeah. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Prior to this release, we also got a darker colored Falcon as part of the sub-team Night Force. Same OG figure, same OG accessories, now in black, brown, and gray. I mean, I'm guessing that the designers felt it would be sacrilegious to try and 90-fy the classic Green Beret look by throwing in some neon or sci-fi elements. So that was pretty much it for Falcon in the Real American Hero line. The next one we would get would be in 2008 as part of the modern 25th anniversary line. This new Falcon would be sold in a comic 2-pack with his Cobra La 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 buddy, Nemesis Immortal, because, you know, trademark issues, I guess. And speaking of issues, this guy definitely had some with his face, which looked a little undersized and Asian. Fortunately, Hasbro would fix this with later releases of Falcon colored in Mad Marauder green and blue, Night Force brown and black, and if that wasn't dark enough for you, an even blacker Special Forces mission for the 50th anniversary line. Curiously though, this rather excellent mold wouldn't be released in his classic green camo. But in any case, we would get that, a classic Falcon, in a larger scale as part of the classified line in 2023. Which unfortunately came with what many collectors considered to be the worst head sculpt in the line to date. I mean, look at this thing. Yeesh. It's even more unfortunate that his fellow Joe Wavemate, CoverGirl's head was seemingly sculpted by the same person. Double yeesh. I had to switch out her head with a much better looking one, calling back to her original blonde animated look. But as for Falcon, fortunately, Hasbro threw us a bone by giving us a Night Force version of Falcon, along with a new partner named Quarrel, with an improved head. Well, slightly improved, but definitely better, that I just popped onto my original Falcon. And don't worry kiddies, Night Force Falcon also came with an additional helmeted head as well, so problem solved, I guess. And speaking of problems, wouldn't you think that any sort of wreck would be a major problem? Car wreck, train wreck, shipwreck? I mean, is this dude the most incompetent Joe or what? If you want to know more about this Joe Sailor, you can check out his story over here. Or if you want other Joe stories, you can check out this playlist over here. Either way, thanks for watching, and I hope to hear from you in the comments below. So go ahead, tell me your story.